Hi and welcome. Please excuse for starting a few minutes late today. So glad that we're able to do this though, because this topic is so crucial for family members to be able to get through daily life. So I'm glad you're here. We're talking about how to win cooperation. And the reason why we're even talking about this is because we know how hard the daily life can be if we feel that we're making requests and we're making, even like giving directions or, nagging and reminding and um, giving feedback, and we're just like not getting our kids' cooperation in the sense of being able to move forward with the routine of the day or um, stay within bounds of certain expectations, and it can really put a lot of stress on the family. So I would love to know in the comments or the chat, what is it that you would love to win your child's cooperation more? Like you'd like to see them cooperate more. What would you like them to do or say or sort of contribute more in your family system, and also the age of your child or ages of your children? Let me know. Put that in the chat, put that in the comments, even if you're on the replay. And I would love to just have a chance to respond to you in the chat or here if you're live. And when we roll through these 4 tips, I want you to notice something. I want you to notice, of these 4, which ones do you think that you already do pretty well and consistently? And which ones are ones that if you were to bring into your family system, your kids would find refreshing, or maybe you would find them very helpful? And the reason why is because of these, there's usually at least one that you already do and that you maybe even do really well. And it's kind of your go-to. And it's what your kids often expect from you when you're, when you're addressing something going on in the family system. Okay. So I want you to go ahead and think about 2 things. The first one, what's something that you would love more cooperation from your kids? And then number 2, I want you to be listening when I roll through these 4 ways of winning cooperation, which one you think you're already doing, or which 1 or 2, and which ones do you think you might do more in the future that might really help. Okay. All right. So as we go into these, I'm going to be explaining and giving examples. And I just want you to hear, like, see if there's anything that you can relate to. You're like, oh, yeah, that's something that I do. Or, oh, that's not something I do and I need to do that. All right. Okay, here we go. And I just want to welcome, hi, Gianni is here, or Jeannie. And then I think we have a couple of people also on the Facebook Live. Welcome. Like I said, put into the comments something that you would like your child to be more cooperative about. Okay. All right. So the 4 steps of winning cooperation, by the way, comes from Jane Nelson. It's a positive discipline concept, but I've also, seen this work across all kinds of environments, whether it's a Montessori preschool, an elementary school, families that have one parent, families that have 2 households, little kids, middle-aged kids. So like, your elementary school year, middle school age kids, or even teenagers and even adults. I've even had people say, this is something I can do at work when I work with adults. I said, absolutely. So let's get into it. So the first one is to get into their world. And what does it mean to get into their world? What we're talking about there is when you often have your own agenda or your own desire of like what's going to happen next in a routine, or a lesson you want them to learn from you, you want to communicate some news or some information. Oftentimes getting into their world is the first step, because if you're not aware of where they're at, like how are they feeling, how are they thinking, what are they even paying attention to, it's almost like they're in a bubble and you're on the outside, like those the Peanuts comic where the adult goes wah 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 wah. It's almost like you're not even speaking their language when they're in their bubble and you haven't gotten into it with them. And that can look like ignoring, refusing, turning away, protesting, whining, saying, oh, you don't get it, and stomping away and closing a door, slamming a door. There's a lot of ways that we can be missing getting into their world. And they might say, you don't understand, right? You don't get it. So if you're hearing any of those responses, if you're getting those responses, it could be that you're missing this piece of getting into their world. So how that can sound is you could, for example, get down to the child's level, maybe go shoulder to shoulder instead of like kind of head to head with them, and just pay attention to what they're doing. And actually, you maybe don't even say anything except, hey, what's going on? And that's it. What are you up to? Right. And you really do just take them in, observing what they're doing, maybe showing a bit of interest in what they're up to. Like I'm thinking of a scenario where a kid's sitting and making art, and it's time to transition to getting ready for school soon. Maybe it's early in the morning. And you could say, hey, it's time to get ready to school. You got to put that away so you can get dressed. Is a really different interaction, especially if they ignore and refuse all those things we talked about, than sitting down next to them and saying, hi, good morning. What are you up to? Oh, I like how you used green right there on your art, right? And just seeing if they could open up to you and start to bring you into their world, looking for that opening. Okay, there's no more, we pop the bubble, or we opened a little hatch in the bubble and they're inviting you to peek in, or maybe even get inside of it with them. This can take 10 seconds to 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be a whole hour of getting lost in their world, which is maybe the thing that I've seen parents overdo this one sometimes. Okay. But at least get into their world. Next one. And Gianni, I have your comment. I'll get to it in a minute. That's great. Thank you for participating in that. The next thing you can do is to show understanding. When you show a kid understanding, it's like saying, there's something about this that makes sense to me. I'm a viable thought partner for how, to handle this feeling or manage what's coming up. And I get it. So it's the opposite of, you don't get it, slam the door, or right. It's, I get it. And sometimes it's hard. It's not easy to understand. Like maybe, like for example, I've had a parent come up to a child playing video games and they'll literally say the opposite of this and say, I don't know why you spend so much time playing this silly game. And that's kind of crushing to the kid who cares a lot about their game. Because in a sense, you're saying, I don't understand why you find this valuable. And so you may not have a good sense of what's valuable and not valuable, right? And that means I don't think you have good judgment or good taste. There's all these things are like you're wasting time. You're not, like your ideas of how things work are silly, right? It can be a little condescending. So the opposite of that could be you sit down, get into their world, ask them about, oh, what are you working on in this level on a video game, for example, and then let them talk about it, see if they'll tell you more. Like, what's that? And then you can show some understanding when they are disappointed about having to turn the video game off, for example. And say, hey, oh, I get it, man, you're so close to finishing this level, right? And we do have to get ready for our outing, let's say. How many more, and this is where you can start to move towards some problem solving. But before we go there, find one thing that makes sense about it. So you could say something like, oh yeah, when I'm in the middle of something I really care about, it's always hard for me to stop. And especially when I'm so close to finishing something. I totally get it, bud. Showing understanding. Next is to share your real feelings and perceptions. I also want to say something about number 2. If you get stuck on number 2 and all you do is go, oh yeah, I feel you, I know what you mean, but you're not bringing in any like leadership around but we still need to do this. We still, some structure, some demand, or you're not like, you're just letting their experience be the only experience without sharing your feelings and perceptions. Oftentimes we can get into some trouble about like who's actually in charge, because in the end, there's some things that we're collaborative about, and there's some things that are just the adult's decision. And oftentimes we can get a little lost in their worlds or show so much understanding that they think that those reasons or those feelings they're having are the only deciding factor. So you have to be careful with these two. But I would say if these are absent, it can make a huge improvement to do it to a degree. Okay. So one way that you can make sure that you're moving things along is to move to number 3, which is to share your real feelings and perceptions. And part of their perceptions is to say, yes, it's kind of like a yes, and it's like, yes, oh, I know how that can feel. And I'm also concerned that if we don't wrap this up soon, we're going to be stressed about getting out the door in time. And that's the opposite of of what we want today. And it's going to make us make things even more upsetting. So yeah, that's what I'm concerned about. And then wait and see if they say something like, okay, like, can I just have 5 more minutes? Right. And they try to negotiate a little bit. And you already have in your mind that you'll negotiate up to 10 minutes, let's say. And you could say, yeah, that's fine. Take 7 if you need it. And that feel starts to move in the right direction. Another thing you can do about sharing your real feelings and perceptions is share like a really, really short observation from before, which would be a perception like, well, I do know though that like last time when it was time to turn off the video game and you started to say 1 more minute, we ended up having a big yelling match at the end. And, you know, looking back, like, I really wish we had found another way through that. I don't really want to yell today, honey. And I bet you don't want to be yelled at. And like, that's helpful. That's actually productive, right? Because you're helping them remember a little bit that something, didn't go great and it could be improved. And you're setting the stage for number 4. Okay, so number 4, working on a solution together. Although I do want to say something about number 3 still, which is that if you overdo number 3, that can also be a problem. If it's the only thing you do is make it about how you feel and what you perceive, then they start to get the opposite idea, which is that then overdoing number 1 and number 2 will do, which is that only my perspective matters, and what I need is the highest priority, and there's not a whole lot of room for you and your feelings and your thoughts and your perceptions. And we might even be giving the kids the idea that they're responsible for how we feel. Like, I feel angry now, and it's like your fault is something they might be hearing if we're only focusing on our own feelings and perceptions. So again, use lightly, get into their world, show understanding, a brief thing about your feelings and perceptions, and then you can move into solutions. Now, before I go over solutions, I want to say that this is a good time for you to think about and reflect. And Gianni, since you're here, and I was going to run through a scenario for you and your 5-year-old daughter in a moment, of all 4. But since you're here, what would help me, Gianni, to use your example, and to support you today would be to know is from 1, 2, 3, and 4, which ones are ones that you tend to do already, like my go-tos. So like my go-to might be number 2, but then what I really need, what I need to maybe bring in more of is number 4, or all the rest, right? I would love to know if there's one of these that you're already trying and already doing, and it's kind of your go-to, and it wouldn't be a big stretch for you to do it. Oops, that's a big shift. Okay, here we go. This is where it's supposed to be. Yeah, so go ahead and pop that into the chat, Gianni, when you have a chance. In the meantime, I'm going to explain number 4. So working on a solution together is what it sounds like, right? You brainstorm, try and think of what like negotiate a little bit. You can frame it as a win-win solution. You can frame it as like, what's our goal and what do we each need to do to meet that goal? Because sometimes it doesn't feel like a win for either of you. You can brainstorm for like logistical things, like, well, okay, how about if we set a timer for 5 minutes, and when it goes off, you don't turn off the video game right away, then it'll be my job to come in and say, are you going to turn that off? And then if you don't do it, and I have to turn it off, then that means we're going to need to have a conversation when you get home from school about how this routine is going to go. Because I think you're old enough to turn it off yourself, and you shouldn't need me to come in and like take it away from you, take your iPad away from you and turn it off for you. So we're going to have to chat about that. I mean, so I set up a couple things there, my expectations, our roles, and possibly a mechanism that will help us, that could build in this little mini routine for us. And then you can say, yeah, if it works, great. If it doesn't work, we'll have to think of something else. And that builds in some accountability of, we're going to keep working on this until we find a solution. One thing that I want to caution people on with number 4 is that you can become one-dimensional as I'm here to fix things so we can move on, and I don't really care much about what you're up to in their world, or don't really have much empathy for you. and I'm not really showing my care around like how this might be impacting you. And I'm not personally invested or can relate to this. I'm not really sharing with you my reasons for this. I just want this to work because it should work. And that's the message that comes across when we only do number 4. And sometimes it can go along sort of gender lines that folks who identify more masculine, dads and masculine folk can sometimes be very focused on let's fix it, let's fix it, let's fix it. Like you come to somebody and you just want to talk about something, and immediately they offer you a solution before you've asked. Doesn't always feel so great. Imagine if you didn't even ask to talk. If someone comes up to you and just offers a solution, it's kind of that it starts to feel a bit like nagging, like finger wagging, and or just sort of out of touch. And also, I have to say that you come up with better solutions if you do 1, 2, and 3 with the kid. Because not only are they more invested in the solution, so it's more likely to work, but you also have more information from which to make suggestions. I mean, how many of you have been put off by somebody who comes in and gives you advice and they haven't taken the time to ask you what you've already tried, or, what you care about, or really empathize with you? They're just like, well, you know what you need? You need to hire a nanny 3 nights a week and that'll solve everything. And you're just like, wow, that's not helpful right now, for example, right? So it can feel like that for the kids when we jump to number 4. So that's my caution on just doing number 4. But put together, you can see how this could feel so supportive. Jenny says she's been trying to incorporate 1 and 2 a lot more now since those weren't in her toolbox before, and she might need to balance that with number 3. Gotcha. So you were a jump to number 4 person, which is oftentimes the mode we get into to move things along, right? Why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do this, right? Like, oh, not like that, like this. See, it works. Let's go, right? And I think having the strength of like the executive functioning around being able to like identify a problem and fix a problem on the spot is an incredible skill that is very helpful in parenting. But sometimes it can really leave the kids' voice and their sort of personhood out of it, right? Now they're more like a thing to make to do things, rather than a person who has thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, and even maybe solutions of their own. Okay, so running it through with a 5-year-old, cooperating when you try. I would get into her world about what does she already know about this when it comes to new skills. And I wouldn't ask her in an interview format. I would get the thing in front of her and have her show you what she already knows how to do with it. So if it's like a workbook, oh, which one's on the page do you already know how to do, or do you like show me the page you've already done? Yeah, so it's get into the world about what they already know is one of the most important things you can do when you're trying to train new skills. And sometimes they are starting with nothing, but then I want you to think about what are the pre-skills that make this new skill possible, and maybe even have her show you those. So let's say writing a sentence is the new skill. Can she write the alphabet? Can she just write all the letters? Maybe it's something more like tactile, right? Like tying her shoes, but have her just show you how she can put her shoe on and pull the laces so that the laces are tight. So that's a great way to get into a child's world. You can also ask her what happened last time you tried to do it. And maybe there's some baggage there around, well, I tried it, but then it pinched my finger and it hurts so bad, I was like, okay, all right, well, so no pinching is a goal for today. Let's make sure that happens, right? So get into their world about the task itself and about their relationship to that task, like their experience with it so far. Showing understanding, and this particularly is important when they are getting stuck in any way and feeling tentative about going forward, or frustrated or confused or overwhelmed. Just let them know it's okay. Oh, it's okay, hun. You don't have to do it right. You don't have to get it the first time. I'm here to help, right? Something reassuring, and saying, it took me 10 months to learn how to tie my shoes, right? Or whatever it is. Like, I'm still learning things too, and get stuck, and you can share one thing, right? We're all learning here. and it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to get stuck. I'm here to help, right? And showing some understanding. Like one thing that makes sense about it, like it can be frustrating when you try 3 times and it's still not working. I think this might be one of those though that we have to try 30 times before it gets working. So we're only on number 3. We've got a lot more to go. Those kinds of things. Sharing your real feelings and perceptions, I already covered just by like, yeah, sometimes me too. Perception could be, I think what's happening is, and you can share, I think what's happening is we're going a little too fast. I think we need to just slow down and do one step at a time. I think what's happening is that we picked the wrong timing. I think we should wait till after we have some food, right? If you sense some like short fuses around hunger or tired. How about if I do it for you this time and you can watch? And next time when we're a little more rested or after we've had some food, you can try again. And you can even try with mommy shoes, right? So work on a solution together. So sometimes it is you do some, I do some, you do while I watch, I do while you watch. Let's practice later on many shoes, different kinds, etc. And then you have that solution to go forward with. Okay. All right. So Gianni, would love to hear one thing that stood out about rolling through the building new skills example. What I love is that it can be short, like it can be under a minute. A lot of times one of the barriers to winning cooperation or to just getting along with our kids in general and dealing with big feelings and low motivation when they come up is that we say we don't have time. And I understand that oftentimes it feels like we don't have time. And one of the things we can do is just acknowledge that. Sweetie, I don't have time to show you this right now. But why don't we work on it in the afternoon? I'm going to do it for you this time. And then we'll practice later. That can be the shorthand of it. That's the shorthand, but I think the shortcut when you don't have the time. But I also want to trouble this idea that it takes a long time to do this. And here's why I feel qualified to do that, to trouble this, is that I was sometimes in charge of 12, 24, 36, even 48 kids at times. And I had to have time. I had to, right? Because if I didn't, I didn't have a lot of later to help kids, and it would stack up really quickly. And so I got really efficient, and parents can too. This is a learned skill, friends, at rolling through the 4 steps, or at least 2 of them, in less than a minute, sometimes in 10 to 20 seconds. And it can go so quickly. So here's an example. I'm going to time myself in 3, 2, 1. Oh, sweetie, the laces are giving you trouble again. Can you show me what you can do so far? Oh, great. Okay, so you can tighten it and exit. Got it. All right. I totally understand. This is the part where it gets tricky. How about if I show you this part this time? You can watch until you feel more comfortable with it. Okay. Does that work for you? Okay, here we go. Let me do it. That was 25 seconds, I think. So under 30 seconds, you can do it. You can fit all 4 steps in, and I kind of combine 2 and 3, and that's fine. Whatever it takes. And if you have longer time, you might expand on some of those and get them listen more, ask a couple more questions in there, and then even ask them about how would you like me to support you, and see if they have some they can brainstorm some solutions with you before you even suggest one. Okay. So that is your condensed version. Jenny says she likes the tip about building off skills she already has. Yeah. I think that's one of the key ones when it comes to learning and learning skills. So I like that one stood out to Gianni. I could see that making a big impact. It's also helpful because then you're not sort of giving them more information than they need. I don't know about you, but I and many kids are sensitive to being sort of talked down to in any way, of being like, well, here's how you do this thing. And you're like, you already know the thing. Sometimes I get even enraged. Like, don't tell me these things that I already know, get to the part where I'm stuck, and get frustrated. And kids, especially with their young developing nervous systems and not having a whole lot of resilience tools yet, or perspective or patience, could really fly off the handle if you miss the mark in terms of what they actually need support with, like what their growth zone is. So I like this piece, Jenny, as a preventative too, for any kind of friction that might come up in the learning new skills piece. But every family is going to have, and every child is going to have a different scaffolding into, right? So like, in other words, like the number of steps that you're going to break it down into when teaching a new skill, depending on the kid, the skill, the parent, the task, and how demanding you're going to be and push versus supporting them along the way with maybe doing for them or showing them and taking that time out for training. It's going to need to be a very careful step out process. But once you get it down 3 or 4 times, which is what happens, and oftentimes, like I see parents do this all the time in my year-long program or in my coaching intensives, they start to get down the pattern and the kid starts to get down the pattern. And next thing you know, they're able to build a lot of skills in a short amount of time. And that leads to more self-confidence and independence and more of that sense of being on the same team, working towards similar goals that we're all wanting to move towards. So I just want you to know this is a smaller piece, but it has a huge impact. So please feel free to let me know questions you have, other ways I can support you. We are still enrolling till the end of the week when this recording is put out. So till February 15th for a year-long Family Foundations Immersion program. And if that's something that you think could be a good fit for you, I know a year sounds like a long time, but just imagine what a year could do if you were to stack your toolboxes and have continuous support in your own growth and your own development. And alongside you, your kids will grow with you as your parenting progresses. It's a really beautiful thing. And now we've had, dozens and dozens of families go through. This is our 11th cohort right now of this program. And we're so excited about who's already joined. And there are some spots still left in the program. So if that's something you'd like to explore, I really recommend you getting on my calendar before the 15th at the link I dropped into the chat. This is probably the last time I'm going to be offering it until maybe April, in terms of, hey, let's get you rolling and thinking about what's possible for you in this next year. And there's no obligation to join. It isn't a sales call. It's an exploration call where I give you strategies. We look at your learning plan from a quiz I'm going to have you take. And then at the end, we'll have a chat about whether it's a fit for you to hop into one of my programs. So that resource is there for you. And we do have something really exciting coming up that I'm preparing it behind the scenes. My team has been working on since the fall. And so look out for some fun announcements coming up about that. All right, just want to make sure that the Facebook folks have the link, and then we're going to close the session. So good to have you all here, and may you continue to work towards being a calm, empowered parent, raising confident, happy, and resilient kids. Until next time, lots of love. Bye for now. Bye, Gianni.